Brazilian meatpackers reassess beef exports to the US amid tariffs. In a surprising turn of events, Brazilian meatpackers are reconsidering their beef exports to the United States following the recent announcement of a hefty 50% tariff by President Donald Trump. This development has sent ripples through the industry, prompting discussions about the future of beef trade between Brazil and the US. Roberto Perosa, the president of the Brazilian beef industry lobby ABIEC, confirmed that the private sector is currently evaluating the feasibility of new shipments to the US market. The United States stands as Brazil's second-largest market for beef products, trailing only behind China, according to trade statistics. This makes the implications of the tariff particularly significant for Brazilian exporters. The private sector is analyzing the potential for new shipments in light of the increased tariffs, Perosa stated on Tuesday, highlighting the uncertainty that now looms over the industry. The announcement of these tariffs has already had a noticeable impact on Brazil's cattle market. Alcides Torres, a beef market consultant with Scott Consultoria, noted that the uncertainty surrounding the tariff has led to a sharp decline in cattle purchases by companies. The market has turned cold, Torres remarked, indicating a significant slowdown in activity. As the world's leading beef exporter, Brazil supplies approximately 23% of the beef imported by the United States, according to estimates from Genial Investimentos. In the wake of Trump's tariff announcement, Brazilian meatpackers have been working diligently to adjust their shipping schedules and production plans. Some companies have even opted to temporarily suspend production aimed at the US market, as they navigate this new landscape. One of the companies feeling the brunt of this tariff is Minerva, a major beef packer in Brazil. The firm has reported that around 5% of its net revenue comes from beef sales to the US. Following the tariff announcement, which is set to take effect on August 1, Minerva has been proactive in its approach. After releasing its first quarter results in May, the company indicated that it had already processed a significant volume of cattle and preemptively transferred meat to US facilities to mitigate the risks associated with the impending tariffs. However, Minerva has chosen not to comment further on the situation. Interestingly, a persistent shortage of cattle in the US has led to an increased demand for Brazilian beef imports. Analysts suggest that the new tariff could ultimately drive up prices for US consumers, raising questions about the broader implications for the beef market. As this situation unfolds, it invites a deeper conversation about the future of international trade and the complexities of tariffs. What do you think about the impact of these tariffs on the beef industry? Will they ultimately benefit or harm consumers in the US? Share your thoughts in the comments. Trump's Brazil tariffs, how they'll affect US coffee drinkers. The potential imposition of a staggering 50% tariff on all imports from Brazil, the leading coffee producer in the world, is sending shockwaves through the US coffee sector, and consumers are likely to feel the impact. Jeff Yerxa, co-owner of Lost Sock Roasters, stands amidst bags of coffee beans in his Washington, D.C. warehouse, where the rich aroma of roasting coffee typically fills the air. After nearly 10 years of running the business alongside co-founder Nico Cabrera, Yerxa admits that he has become desensitized to the smell. "I can't even smell it anymore," he chuckles, but his focus has shifted to a more pressing concern: tariffs. Recently, President Trump announced his intention to impose a hefty 50% tariff on all goods imported from Brazil, which accounts for approximately 30% of the coffee consumed in the United States. This is in addition to an existing 10% tariff that affects nearly all imports. The news has raised alarm bells, particularly among smaller roasters like Lost Sock, who fear for their livelihoods. When people visit their local coffee shop, whether it's a big chain like Starbucks or a small independent cafe, they are likely purchasing some form of Brazilian coffee, explains Monica de Bol, a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. A 50% tariff would devastate that market. Although the tariffs are not set to take effect until August 1, the uncertainty surrounding them is already unsettling the industry. Experts like de Bol and Yerxa warn that it is consumers who will ultimately bear the financial burden. The impact on prices will be significant, de Bol asserts. The tariff threats extend beyond Brazil. The Trump administration has also proposed tariffs on coffee imports from other countries, including Vietnam, Colombia, Ethiopia, and Indonesia, which together contribute a substantial portion of the world's coffee supply. Yerxa is trying to remain calm until the details are finalized, but he acknowledges that profit margins are already razor-thin. The uncertainty is probably the worst part, he says. At the end of the day, it's the consumer who will feel the brunt of it. I don't want to raise prices, but we're looking at potential cost increases of 30% on coffee. The Trump administration defends its trade policies, claiming that the tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs, renegotiate trade agreements, and reduce the trade deficit. In the case of Brazil, Trump has suggested that the tariffs are also a form of political retribution against the country for its treatment of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is currently facing trial for attempting to overturn the results of the 2022 election. However, for coffee roasters like Yerxa and Colby Barr, CEO and co-founder of Verve Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz, California, the administration's rationale seems misguided. The U.S. does not produce coffee at the scale that meets its consumption needs, aside from a few small farms in Hawaii and California. It's essentially a tax on Americans' mornings, Barr states. The coffee industry has faced significant volatility in recent years, leading to a sharp increase in market prices. Factors contributing to this volatility include the COVID-19 pandemic and consecutive low-yield harvests in Brazil, which have been exacerbated by drought and rising temperatures linked to climate change. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, roasted coffee prices in the U.S. surged by 12.7% in June compared to the previous year, with instant coffee seeing a 16.3% increase. The average retail price for a pound of ground coffee reached $8.13 in June, marking an increase of over $1 per pound since the beginning of the year. Nika Finkelstein, a 27-year-old coffee drinker, is already feeling the pinch of rising coffee prices. On a recent afternoon, she sat outside Blue Bottle Coffee at Union Station in Washington, D.C., reflecting on her coffee buying habits. She prefers to brew coffee at home but indulges in cafe visits occasionally. If prices go up even more due to tariffs, I would have to cut back on my coffee shop visits and stick to making it at home, which is fine, but it's just not as enjoyable, she shares. There's something special about sitting in a coffee shop with a book or scrolling through my phone. The reason so much coffee in the U.S. is sourced from Brazil is due to the country's vast production capabilities, cost-effectiveness, favorable climate, and appealing flavor profiles. Yerxa notes, most of the industry relies on Brazilian coffees as the backbone of their blends. Lost Sock Roasters is known for its high-quality, single-origin coffees sourced from various countries, but it also incorporates Brazilian beans into some of its blends, thanks to long-standing relationships with two cooperatives in Brazil. The process of getting these beans from Brazil to Washington, D.C. is complex, involving international partners, contracts negotiated well in advance, and meticulous planning. Lost Sock coordinates with producers and exporters, placing orders for specific quantities of beans from designated Brazilian farms. The importer adds a margin for logistics, and Yerxa then incorporates that final price into Lost Sock's wholesale and retail pricing. So, where do the tariffs fit into this equation? Initially, the importer will bear the cost of the tariff upon bringing the beans into the U.S. That tariff will simply be another line item on the invoice we receive when we release that coffee, Yerxa explains. We then factor that cost into our pricing for both wholesale and retail. De Bol points out that if the tariffs take effect on August 1st, it may take a few months for consumers to notice price increases at cafes or restaurants. This is because these businesses typically purchase coffee in bulk and may have stock that lasts for several months. However, consumers who buy coffee beans at grocery stores may experience the effects of the tariffs more quickly, as coffee is a perishable product and stocking up can only go so far. In the long run, if these tariffs remain in place, Lost Sock may have to rethink its use of Brazilian coffees in certain blends. However, Yerxa is reluctant to sever ties with long-term partners in Brazil. It feels unjust to abandon a relationship when times get tough, he states. We'll likely absorb some of the costs, hoping that prices will stabilize in the future. Yet, if coffee prices from Brazil rise, roasters will scramble to source beans from other countries, warns Barr from Verve Coffee. However, those countries are also facing tariffs. It's incredibly challenging, and nearly impossible, to prepare for this situation, Barr laments. Tariffs do not benefit coffee producers, small and medium-sized businesses across the country, or consumers. Why are we pursuing this path? This situation raises important questions. How do you feel about the potential impact of these tariffs on your coffee experience? Are you willing to pay more for your morning brew, or do you think there are better solutions? Share your thoughts in the comments.